something that has the the drawings over the person. Thanks, Pam.
Okay. Here, I'll share this one. And if you prefer a different one. There's so many.
Yeah, that works. Okay, so the Vayus. Vayu can translate to Vata, which is air and ether. It's the way that air moves throughout the body, or really how movement occurs throughout the body and in what direction it goes. So they kind of mapped out the nervous system, and what the Vayus are the energy that grows or carves out the nervous system. So there are 72,000 nadis, and they were all mapped out in Ayurveda. And the first one, Pranavayu, moves from around the chest up to the face. And it has to do with our exhalations and our inhalations. It has to do with the taking in of prana or life force from the external world and bringing it inside. So it has respiratory and circulatory things. Udana is the connection from our inner world to our outer world. It works in conjunction with prana, the upward flow, and it also connects the supra-physical plane with the physical plane. So sort of like our spiritual self or subtle self with the gross self or the physical self. And sometimes it's associated with the throat chakra, having to do with speech, how like our internal world comes out in the external world. Vyana is all over the body in all different directions. And I always think of it as the blood, the directions that the blood move through the veins, capillaries, arteries. If there's any kind of issue in Vyana, then something won't get fed and deformity can happen. Samana, it can be considered in the space of Manipur chakra or digestion. So it's kind of like the blender, the movement of the breaking down of the food and then digesting and assimilating it out to the rest of the body. And apana is the downward flow of energy. It has to do with the root chakra, or it's around the root chakra. So from the pelvis down to the legs, it has to do with excretion, with menstruation, with ejaculation, all the stuff that's coming out, the pooing and the peeing. So if any of these are clogged or cut off, then that function won't work anymore, right? If you think about if somebody gets in an accident and they sever a part of their spinal cord, then there's no energy or electricity that flows out into those parts of the nervous system. So suddenly the legs don't work anymore. Or like it depends on where you sever it, or suddenly the arms don't work anymore, or they can't, they have incontinence, they can't urinate right anymore. So it all has to do with the way that the nervous system moves energy around the body, but the energy builds the physical body. So you could think of it as like the battery of the body, or like the generator that feeds the physical body, helps it grow. So we need healthy airs in the body. Otherwise, things degenerate and you become a mess. So that's my talk on the values. Any questions?
How would you contrast this? I mean, there's certain parallels with the chakras, especially, how would you contrast it with the chakras? Because a lot of what you said applies to some of the chakras, or is in my head does anyway.
No, absolutely. Yeah. The values. So a bunch of values that have sort of concentrated in one area can form a bit of like a nerve nest.
Yeah.
And in those very nervine spaces is where the chakras are. Does that make sense? Like the chakras are this spinning wheel of energy, it's sometimes described as. And you could think of it as like all this energy flowing around this nerve bundle. So we have these energy pockets that all move along the spinal cord that we call the chakras, that each one feeds the parts of the endocrine system. So your apana vayu, which is located around the root, or muladhara chakra, can be, sorry, Mark started talking, I lost my train of thought. How is it associated with the chakra system is what you asked, right? It's okay, so it's associated with feeding the adrenal glands. And then samana, I just read this yesterday and I'm trying to remember. Samana is associated with Manipura chakra, which is associated with our pancreas, feeds our pancreas, which is our digestion. I know Udana is at the throat, and I thought prana was at the heart, but I guess they're saying Vyana is at the heart, which makes more sense because it has to do with circulation. So then prana, they're saying, is higher up. That would be like the higher chakras.
Right.
Yeah. So that's how it would be. Does that answer your question? Yeah, they feed the
It sounds like
glands.
they're really, really super linked, but then everything in the body is super linked. So
It's all linked. It all builds upon itself.
Yeah.
I just gave a lecture about that 2 days ago. Like the tissues, that every tissue builds upon the next tissue. So if you have a deficiency in one tissue, it's going to cause a deficiency in all the subsequent tissues. And everything is kind of grown out of that samana, that digestive power. If you can't digest your food, you're not going to be able to grow the rest of your body. And then you get issues with your reproductive organs. You start getting issues with your bones, issues with your marrow, issues with your nervous system. There are issues with the blood, right? So diet's so important. It's so important. But when you take an asana class, it helps to open up and unclog all these values so that energy can flow more freely. It's usually why by the time you hit shavasana, you feel pretty yummy because everything's flowing as it should.
I was just thinking about how I feel after I work with this sweet young thing of a guy at the gym, and we do it virtually now. And so if I do a half hour's worth of, basically weightlifting, free weightlifting at home virtually with him, I mean, by the end of that, you are flowing all right, It's such a different feeling from when you finish an asana class. And when you finish an asana class, it's as if, unless it's a bad day or something, it's as if your body feels somewhat complete, and you can lie there and just sort of enjoy absorbing whatever you're absorbing, and there's a certain feeling of intactness around your entire body. Whereas when I finish with Brandon, I feel like I got to do something. I have to do something. I cannot not do something. I have to walk around the house. I have to cook something. I have to eat. I have to. I got to do something. I cannot just sit, and it's such an interesting feeling, and it speaks to how those energies are activated differently,
Yeah.
given what you do with your body. So
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, it's like what gunas are reactivating and
Hmm.
what determining forces are reactivating, like especially when you're doing weightlifting, and there's a lot of rajas in that. So there's a lot of like impelling movement. So it makes sense, right? You have to keep moving afterwards.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sometimes you take yoga classes that aren't sequenced properly according to the wisdom, and you feel totally wired afterwards too.
Yeah.
The classes where you feel that feeling you're discussing, where it's like, oh, everything is nice and open, you feel relaxed and good. That's the sattvic feeling. That's what sattva feels like. Like after we eat our meals, it should feel like that. After we hang out with people, it should feel like that. So anything that doesn't feel like that is it's fine. You just have to balance a lot of rajas with tamas. So that's why a lot of people seesaw between, like, they wake up, they take their caffeine, and then they gotta have some wine to go to sleep. It's like the uppers and the downers. And sattva is just more even and sustainable as well.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for sharing that again.
Yeah.
That was helpful.
Do we want to read a few slokas today?
Yeah.
Let's see.
First, Pam, when you sent out a communication about where in the HYP we could find some information. Do you remember what page that was? There
I
were a lot of
posted it
pages.
in the chat on Facebook.
Okay. All right. Never mind. I got it. I can find it.
Yeah, and it's in the book, it comes up 68 times in that book, but there's specific pages I highlighted that it shares more information.
Okay. Thank you. I just couldn't remember where you put it.
Yeah,
So,
it's in the group chat
okay. Thank you.
or the Facebook chat.
Right.
Um, mm,
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo
so we are on chapter 4, Sloka 35. We're slowly catching up on Instagram, so soon I'll be singing. Oh.
यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषेण द्रक्ष्यस्यात्मन्यथो मयि.
And when you have thus learned the truth, you will know that all living beings are but part of me, and that they are in me and are mine. The result of receiving knowledge from a real self-realized soul, or one who knows things as they are, is learning that all living beings are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The sense of a separated existence from Krishna is called Maya. Some think that we have nothing to do with Krishna, that Krishna is only a great historical personality, and that the Absolute is the impersonal Brahman. Factually, as it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, this impersonal Brahman is the personal effulgence of Krishna. Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the cause of everything. In the Brahma Samhita, it is clearly stated that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that cause of all causes, the cause of all causes. Even the millions of incarnations are only his different expansions. Similarly, the living entities are also expansions of Krishna. The Mayavadi philosophers wrongly think that Krishna loses his own separate existence in his many expansions. This thought is material in nature. We have experience in the material world that a thing, when fragmentally distributed, loses its own original identity. But the Mayavadi philosophers fail to understand that absolute means that 1 + 1 is equal to 1, and that 1 - 1 is also equal to 1. This is the cause in the absolute world. This is the case in the absolute world. For want of sufficient knowledge is the absolute science. We are now covered with illusion, and therefore we think that we are separate from Krishna. Although we are separated parts of Krishna, we are nevertheless not different from him. The bodily difference of the living entities is Maya, or not actual fact. We are all meant to satisfy Krishna. By Maya alone, Arjuna thought that the temporary bodily relationship with his kinsman was more important than his eternal spiritual relationship with Krishna. The whole teaching of the Gita is targeted toward this end, that a living being, as his eternal servitor, cannot be separated from Krishna, and his sense of being an identity apart from Krishna is called Maya. The living entities, as separate parts and parcels of the Supreme, have a purpose to fulfill. Having forgotten that purpose since time immemorial, they are situated in different bodies as men, animals, demigods, etc. Such bodily difference arise from forgetfulness of the transcendental service of the Lord. But when one is engaged in transcendental service through Krishna consciousness, one becomes at once liberated from this illusion. One can acquire such pure knowledge only from that bona fide spiritual master, and thereby avoid the delusion that the living entity is equal to Krishna. Perfect knowledge is that the Supreme Soul, Krishna, is the supreme shelter for all living entities, and giving up such shelter, the living entities are deluded by the material energy, imagining themselves to have a separate identity. Thus, under different standards of material identity, they become forgetful of Krishna. When, however, such deluded living entities become situated in Krishna consciousness, it is to be understood that they are on the path of liberation, as confirmed in the Bhagavatam. Merkater hitvan yatha rupam savarpena yavaya stitha. Liberation means to be situated in one's constitutional position as the eternal servitor of Krishna, Krishna consciousness.
अपि चेदसि पापेभ्यः सर्वेभ्यः पापकृत्तमः सर्वं ज्ञानप्लवेनैव वृजिनं सन्तरिष्यसि.
Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. Proper understanding of one's constitutional position and relationship to Krishna is so nice that it can at once lift one from the struggle of for existence, which goes on in the ocean of nescience. This material world is sometimes regarded as an ocean of nescience. I don't know how to say this word, so I'm probably butchering it. And sometimes as a blazing forest. In the ocean, however expert a swimmer one may be, the struggle for existence is very severe. If someone comes forward and lifts the struggling swimmer from the ocean, he is the greatest savior. Perfect knowledge received from the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the path of liberation. The boat of Krishna consciousness is very simple, but at the same time, the most sublime.
यथैधंसि समिद्धोऽग्निः भस्मसात् कुरुतेऽर्जुन ज्ञानाग्नि सर्वकर्माणि भस्मसात् कुरुते तथा.
As the blazing fire turns fire to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. Perfect knowledge of self and super self and of their relationship is compared herein to fire. This fire not only burns up all reactions to impious activities, but also all reactions to pious activities, turning them to ashes. There are many stages of reaction: a reaction in the making, reaction fructifying, reaction already achieved, and reaction a priori. But knowledge of the constitutional position of the living entity burns everything to ashes. When one is in complete knowledge, all reactions, both a priori and a posteriori, are consumed. In the Vedas, it is stated, Yubi Yuhavasaya eti tarate tar sav asadiyuni. One overcomes both the pious and the impious interactions of work. I'm going to pause here. So 38. Give us a moment. I know we had a chat this morning, but I want to give us time to discuss these three. Or I could read one more if we want. Shall I read another one?
If
All
you
right.
like.
So you good? You want to chat? You want me to read another one? You're on mute. Domenica's on mute too.
I guess you could read another one. I mean, I feel like I have to read these over.
I feel like between the Vayus and the three we just read, that was like a lot of information for a Monday morning. So maybe we just not read anymore today, and we can always start breath earlier and meditation earlier and jump back in tomorrow.
I like that. I like the line in 36. Well, it's not a matter of like. I'm intrigued by the line. This material world is sometimes regarded as an ocean of nescience and sometimes as a blazing forest. In the ocean, however expert a swimmer one may be, the struggle for existence is very severe. So and then next it says, you're a savior if you come forward and lift the struggling swimmer. And then it sounds like you lift the struggling swimmer with perfect knowledge, which is different than the ocean of nescience. It's the perfect knowledge is the recognition of Krishna, I guess. Is that true? I mean, the ocean of nescience sounds like uh, Amanda has talked about the richness of the world, and there is a tremendous amount out there, and an almost an infinite amount to know, and you can be swept away by that. It's a tsunami of knowledge. And then they talk about, yeah, but the boat of Krishna consciousness, which is the, you know, the one knowing, is very simple, but at the same time most sublime. So I'm wondering if that's an approximate translation, meaning that you really need to know only one thing, and you really need to be knee deep in only one thing.
I had to look up what that nescience word was. I didn't know. It's like lack of information or being ignorant. I think I agree with you, Sue.
I'm over here talking and I'm realizing I'm muted. I'm so sorry. I'm like responding to you guys and I'm like, no one's responding back.
I didn't mute you guys today, so you guys must have muted yourselves.
No, I did mute myself and forgot. No, so the boat, I guess, is like keeping you above the water. It's like transcending the material ignorance, I guess. As a prakriti. And the one thing is awareness of the universal energy, universal consciousness. It like pulls you out. It pulls you out of the heavy pull of Maya or illusion.
Yeah, so I'm really glad you pointed this one out, because now the more and more I'm reading it, it is really a very beautiful example. Or not example, but paragraph.
Mm-hmm. So should we meditate?
Yeah. Morning, Alexandra. You know, going back to what Sue was saying before with the weights, I woke up this morning and did my workout, which was with weights. And I don't usually work out in the morning. And I was telling Domenico when I first joined, I was like, and I was sweating. Now I'm like, I'm cold. I'm hitting my wall. So it is that idea. It's like you get the energy up and you crash. Whereas in yoga class, you're so steady after. All right, so let's sit up nice and tall. A few rounds into the nose, out through the nose. Do a few rounds of alternate nostril breath. If you want to continue on with that, it's totally fine. I'll offer a bellows and then maybe a few rounds of bumblebee if we have a few extra minutes to do breath. And then settle into our meditation. So bring your right hand over to your nose. Close the right nostril with the thumb. Inhale through the left. Close left, exhale right. Inhale right. Close right, exhale left. Inhale left. Close left, exhale right. Inhale right. Close right, exhale left. Taking 5 more rounds on your own breath, adding blocks of retention if it's in your practice. Now exhale out the left side and then just take a few breaths in through the nose and out through the nose. For bellows breath, you'll inhale all the way, exhale all the way, inhale halfway, and just pump the belly in and out. Exhale all the way. Inhale all the way. Retain the locks. Lock the root, the navel, the chin. The throat, drop the chin. And then release the throat, release the navel, release the root. Exhale all the way. Full inhale. Full exhale. Inhaling halfway. And pump the belly. Exhale all the way. Full inhale. Retain the locks, the root, the belly, the throat. Release the throat, the navel, the root. Exhale all the way. Full inhale, full exhale. One more round, inhaling halfway. Pump the belly. Exhale all the way. Full inhale, retaining the locks. Releasing the locks, completely exhaling. Just evening out the breath on the inhales and the exhales. Take 3 rounds of bumblebee breath. You'll close the ears with the thumbs, and the next 2 fingers you'll hover over the eyes, closing off the senses. You'll inhale and exhale with the lips sealed, creating a humming sound at the back of the throat, making the breath vibrate inside as you exhale. You'll sound like a bumblebee. I'll set the timer. Bringing hands to your heart center. Namaste.
Namaste.
Have a beautiful
Namaste.
day.
You too.